I was told to introduce the speaker. I get a lay too, right? So. I'm Kurt Dela Cruz. When I'm not driving a van up to the volcano, I am, as I was introduced, a senior advisor here at the University of Hawaii at Hilo Advising Center, where I work with students in the areas of nursing and biology and all those areas. But make no mistake about it, my genealogy is in the humanities. And I have the honor and distinction today to introduce one of my conspirators, actually. A couple things. Yeah, I think in the time that you've spent with us already here in Hilo, whether it was on the hoʻokahi up to volcano yesterday, or just in this introduction today, how is that ring? Yeah, Rome, Paris, Hilo. Yeah. That needs to be a T-shirt, I think, right? You know. So as my sister Pele said earlier, I am from Ka'u. We are a very proud people beyond the volcano, down on the south side of the island. Yeah. And couple things, you know, like today you see, like we in the ceremony this morning, we wearing kihe. Yeah. So it's not a toga. Yeah. It's a kihe. It's a garb used for ceremony and in events such as now, where I have the honor of introducing our speaker. You know, it's in my office all the time because we might have to kihe in a moment. Okay. It's as you can see, this morning's opening ceremony was made up not only of students, but there are faculty, staff members in there, library workers. Some kipaipai, we even have grounds people, custodians who will come up with us, okay? And so what you're noticing almost immediately is that you are in a space that is pretty unique, but not unique. This space happens everywhere around the world. We just need to be reminded of these spaces. And so it is with great honor here in Hilo for us to be that reminding agent that a lot of these practices that come from Kanaka, the Hawaiian people, reminds us of all our indigenous roots and how all of us have vibrated together. So these moments bring us together to share in that vibration. Okay, so on behalf of myself, my children, Ka'u people, Hilo people, I tell people I live in economic exile in Hilo, by the way. And when I retire, I will return back to my homelands, you know. But let me get to my formal part. I'm taking up valuable time. Sorry, people online, okay? Jackie Pualani Johnson was born on this Moku o Ke'awe, or the island of Hawaii, and raised in Hilo. Now, Professor Emerita, she retired from the Performing Arts Department at the University of Hawaii at Hilo in 2017 after 38 years where she directed musicals, classicals, and contemporary Western and ethnic theater. She earned a BA and MA degrees in theater from the University of Colorado at Boulder. She founded the Hilo Community Players Shakespeare in the Park, celebrating 48 years in Hilo's Kalakaua Park in 2025, and Kids Shakes, the accompanying family offering. For the last decade or so, her writing, directing, and performance projects have focused on the living history of Hawaiian ali'i, or royalty, during the monarchy period and the immigration cultures that sought a better life in Hawaii. These projects help illuminate her mixed heritage of Hawaiian, Portuguese, Norwegian, German, and Chinese, stemming from the plantation era of Hawaii. A wise saying from the Hawaiian perspective guides her career. Aʻohe pau ka'ike I ka hālau hoʻokahi. One can learn from many sources. My friends, please give a warm aloha and welcome to Anake Jackie Pualani Johnson.
A number of years ago, when I traveled to Europe, I came back and it was the thing, right, to get one of those bumper stickers that said London, Paris, Rome. And I got it, and I attached the hilo to it. So my car in Hilo for many, many years said London, Paris, Rome, Hilo. And I also have to say that I am the president of the Kurt De La Cruz fan club. So at the end of the day, we will gather for that. And I thank the group here that helped me technically as well, because they brought me a remote. Hooray for a remote. So I have choreography as I share my mana'o, my thoughts with you today. So aloha kako, e na mea Hawaii mahalo, na mea Hawaii a me na malihini o na aina ae. E hoʻohipa mai I ka moku ke ave, ku uone hanau. I welcome all those from Hawaii and those visiting from other lands to this, our island, Moko Keawe, the sands of my birth. It is indeed, I'm gonna see if it works. Oh, hana kukulele. There we go. This is a picture of our island from outer space. It's an honor to be given this premier time slot as the first plenary speaker for your conference, yet it is not a surprise because in our culture, respect for kupuna, the elders, warrants that we are given a special place in all things. Might I venture then as the de facto kupuna of these proceedings to say, Velina mai me ke aloha, a me ka mahalo nui. Welcome, and thank you for this courtesy and for the kuleana, the responsibility to heave this canoe from shore into the waters ahead. Yeah. Pulale. Huki. Whoa. How many people are canoe paddlers? Whoa. Oh, yeah. Come on, yeah, right? What we do. Paddling on Hilo Bay. Take a moment to look at the paddlers out there. Always purposeful, right? And always working together. Like a like. Pulale. My daughter's names are on my paddle. Alila. Greetings from the Pai'aina o Hawaiine, the loveliest fleet of islands anchored in any ocean, and that was Mark Twain, noting that in 1866. You know, there is yet another reason that I'm honored to be given the momentous task of opening the conference, and that is because the theater has been my life's work, and I expect that all of you will be delving into aspects of the theatrical over the next few days. How so? Our human story is the lifeblood of the theater. Telling the human story will fill the sails of our vessels, allowing the humanities to chart the unknown waters that reveal the map of human history here in the Pakipika, the Pacific. You are here, I Hawaiine, in time to witness the effect of the Hawaiian Renaissance. Our native Hawaiian language and culture were saved from the brink of extinction over the last few decades, and now they surround us, thriving, imbuing pride and reestablishing our identity as an evolved Pacific people. The outside world was drawn here over 2 centuries ago, settling over time, bringing other ideas and ways of living to a very isolated kingdom, the most isolated, populated place on Earth. So I agree that we are the center, as it was noted before. One of our conference's themes deals with examining how cultural identities intersect, evolve, and adapt, and your very presence here today is evidence of that adaptation. E olu olu. Pardon this quick spiral down the rabbit hole of history. In a nutshell, while outsiders discovered what Hawaii had to offer, our ancestors, in turn, gleaned things from those who were visiting, and we made those our own. Specifically, transitioning from an ages-old oral tradition to written communication nearly overnight. There were over 100 Hawaiian language newspapers beginning as early as the 1830s, and our population was among the most literate in the world at that time. Of note, missionaries who urged the system of writing had only arrived here in 1820. Spiral further to the late 1800s, when the Hawaiian monarchy ruled a kingdom recognized by numerous nations around the world. Western influence was evident in dress, habitations, the crystal and silverware of royalty at the table settings at Pualani Palace. By the way, it was built in 1882. Members of royalty were schooled in American fashion by missionaries at the chief's children's school, which eventually became the Royal School. All this in the English tongue. Now, let us anchor our canoe, dragging it on shore where it can nestle on white sands encircled by kumula'au coconut trees on shady sand. And we'll leave you with that idyllic image for a moment as we catapult to today. My office at the Performing Arts Center here on campus, around 2011. The phone rings and a very pleasant voice says, he is the Reverend Moki Hino of the Episcopal Church across the street. And would I be interested in writing a play about Queen Emma? Ta-da! And this was for the sesquicentennial, I love this, it's actually a verbal warm-up. Sesquicentennial, repeat after me, sesquicentennial, Omaikai, of the Episcopal Church in Hawaii? Well, the answer was, oh, yes, yes. And I have a little tacit here because over 40 years ago, one of the other plenary speakers, Dr. Manu Meyer, she and I worked for the Napono Eau, the Hawaii Center for Native Hawaiian, Gifted and Talented Native Hawaiian Children. And we were in the throes of trying to get things started, the very beginning of the Renaissance, Hawaiian Renaissance. And it was hard, it was a struggle. And one of the things she said to me was, oh, us Hawaiians, so afraid to use our culture. And that was true at that time. And that stayed with me 40-something years later. It still surges through our mind because us Hawaiians, in our pidgin verbiage, are trying not to be afraid to use our culture. So when I answered that reverend, I decided to take a deep breath and dive in. Okay, that was the beginning. I picked up a paddle for that canoe, and that would navigate me into new territory in my life. Excuse me for the personal tone of this journey. It eventually will expand outwards. That auspicious phone call opened the door to being able to preserve oral traditions and explore indigenous knowledge in ways that would couple my Western theater training and my hunger to learn our history. It would lift this knowledge off the page, giving it vitality. Moreover, it would allow me to support the noble efforts of a number of devoted UHH faculty whose life work has been the saving of our Native Hawaiian language, culture, and history. Now, 2 of my children had been a part of Hawaiian language immersion schools, and I had been the family member to learn Ka'olelo Makuahine, our mother tongue, along with them. But there were massive holes in my understanding of that part of my mixed heritage, as was mentioned, right? Portuguese, Hawaiian, Norwegian, German, Chinese. My father had spoken Hawaiian with his tutu wahine, his grandmother, but the suppression of things Hawaiian by the overriding desire to be American and English-speaking American supplanted the language's survival in his generation. So, ola ho. The task was at hand. It was clear that a unique platform of expression needed to be crafted to share our mo'olelo, our stories. So ola, life, well-being, living alive, recovered, healed, to live, to grant, to save, to grant life, survive, thrive. And ho, na ho, there it is. New and fresh, and so is that little graphic. So put those 2 ideas together. What might this new expression be? Let us try. Da, 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 da. There we go. We're going to navigate our canoe forward with living history. Breathing life into our history. Ola ho. I feel like we have, oh, Kevin's so good. He's helping me. Living history could weave many strands together to shape a structure that would carry the words of our ancestors into the performance realm, allowing their stories to find immediacy. I had directed and appeared in living history performances crafted by our premier Hawaiian playwright, Victoria Naleni Nubel, and I saw the effect those performances had on the audience: pride, empowerment, from the knowledge that they would not be forgotten. He mau ali'i o ka wā kahiko. Back to our request. Queen Emma was among our ali'i, our chieftains of times past. It was logical to begin with traditional research methods using the recorded history of our ali'i, but imparting immediacy begged to flesh out details of their lives to include their values, their choices made as leaders and as individuals, and the minutiae of their daily lives. They were people, after all. Yeah? Why, even an attempt should be made to suss out their personalities. This would give their stories relevancy, perspective, allow them to ola ho, or so I hoped. Another rabbit hole. I was of the generation that was not taught about the overthrow of the Hawaiian kingdom. Rather, we were nursed on the fact of how lucky we were to become the 50th state of the United States of America. So it was time to begin at the beginning and learn our history. No small task and a never-ending story. So a number of challenges immediately emerged for the first living history performance. I'm going to do special choreography. There we go. What resources were available to tell Queen Emma's story? A royal child speaking Hawaiian and English, and she also had a French tutor, by the way. Yes, cultural hybridity. A queen of mixed Hawaiian-British ancestry, raised and schooled in a society with deep Western influences, a noted equestrian, the wife of a king, the devoted mother who loses her young child, thus losing hope for Hawaii's future. The richness of her history was crying out to be brought to life. Ola ho! This first project, The Life of Queen Emma, stirred up oh boy, our choreographer would be so frustrated with me not being able to execute this basic move, right? It stirred up all kinds of waters. The waves of challenges presented themselves. The first challenge and first lesson learned was that each story needed context. So the request for this dramatization of Queen Emma came from the Episcopal Church because she and her husband, King Alexander Liholiho Kamehameha IV, were instrumental in establishing the Anglican Church i Hawaiʻi. He, in fact, translated the Bible from English into Hawaiian, i kolel Hawaii, making what the church called the inspired Word of God available to his constituents. After his sad early death at age 29, Emalani traveled to England to solicit support for the church in Hawaii. Surely this had to be featured. So the process needed to be discovered. The third time's the charm. Okay, I'm going to lower, and I'm going to use this rounded arm movement. Oh, polole. Ami is when we do our hips. Column, I got it. He wants me to do that. Ami and slide. Uehe, Ami and slide. Okay, hanaho. He's trying another. He may come to save the day. Okay, process. Try this one. Oh, you're bringing it to me. Ooh. Okay. Now, where to begin? Traditional research to uncover primary sources. That makes sense, yes. But what if the people featured in the living history were not prolific writers? What do we do? Now, Emma did not leave many writings behind, a few important letters, some journal entries, but public records of the time helped. This included Department of Health information about ma'iali'i, the scourge of leprosy, moving through Hawaii at the time. Those records provided a window into Emma helping out in her father's clinic, a factor that most likely contributed to her work to build the Queen's Medical Center via a grassroots, door-to-door campaign, rich material which kind of etched out her life, yes? The research, scripting, rehearsal, and eventual performance was given the title Vespers at Hanaiaka Malama, which was the Hawaiian name for the Queen's Summer Palace. In the script, the Queen settles in at evening on the lanai of her summer home in a verdant valley leading up to the pali, the cliffs on Oahu. UH Hilo student Denise Wu Ackerman, a native Hawaiian who grew up in San Diego, accepted the role of Queen Emma. The performance began with a reading from the Episcopal Book of Common Prayer, and then the Queen set the stage. Vespers was chosen because research revealed that it is a practice in the Episcopal Church, yes, formerly the Anglican Church, to reflect on the day and give thanks for all it offered. Vespers helps suspend time in the show, giving the Queen a legitimate reason to reflect and share her story with the audience. So in the 45-minute one-woman show, Emma reminisces about her life before and after becoming queen. Here is the opening that centers her at Hanaiaka Malama.
Pure brightness of the ever-living Father in heaven, O Jesus Christ, holy and blessed. Now as we come to the setting of the sun and our eyes behold the vesper light, we sing thy praises, O God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Thou art worthy at all times to be praised by happy voices. O Son of God, O Giver of life, and to be glorified through all the words, Amen. I am fond of sitting on the lanai. Each afternoon as the breeze bids goodbye to the gentle waves of Waikiki and decides to dance from the heights of the ko'olau over the pali and into the valley. On the wind is a scent of lokelani, still dripping wet from the gentle rains that bathed the aina in the late afternoon. Shadows are slowly peeking from around the corner here at Hanaiaka Malama, the Southern Cross, my summer home, nudging memories to share with you. E ho'o kipa mai. Hanaiaka Malama is much like me, of mixed heritage, and I hope bearing with dignity the burden of remembering the history of our islands. My family, too, love to sit here and to walk around the hau thicket, to the lush garden of ferns, truly Luanalani, heavenly rest. Always stopping to admire my favorite lily, Crinum augustum. It is called the Queen Emma spider lily, and it juts in between shady trees reaching nearly 7 feet high. Lovely, slim, pink and white petals, like the spears of the Li'ikoa, warriors, cascading from stalwart green blades. This summer palace began its life in Boston, sailed the high seas around Cape Horn, then nestled here due to the good graces of my uncle, John Young II, known to Hawaiians as Kioniana. Its staunch New England exterior has 6 rooms and imposing Doric columns, softened by the foliage of Hawaii at every corner. It is luxurious in its simplicity, yet pleasing. Remarkably different from the grass holly of my birthplace in Kauai, on the Moku o Ke'awe, our island of Hawaii.
Now, a number of living history performances followed, each paddling its own canoe across the storytelling sea, finding its context, all revealing the monarchy period of the late 1800s. Now, several centered on our last queen, Queen Liliuokalani. She was a prolific writer and left a treasure for living history, wherein performances were heightened majestically by her own words. Liliuokalani at Washington Place. Context. By request of the Guild that oversees Iolani Palace, a look at the private life of the Queen and her relationship with her 3 Hanai children was to be the core of this living history. Of course, a trickle of what happened through the overthrow of her kingdom seeped in. Of course, it was the background to her life. Well, here's an example of that from one of the early lines in the script as she refers to Washington Place, her home, once she married. It was here that I returned after my 8-month imprisonment at Iolani Palace, after being dethroned as the Queen o Kiapai Aina o Hawaiian. By carriage, I was driven from my prison, once my palace, to the gateway here, my earlier home. Structure. Chronology gave way to a conversational approach, allowing for time and place to be kind of manipulated, and passages thematically arranged, as we do when conversing. The Queen sat in her parlor, visiting. Liliuokalani began the living history by listening to her mo'opuna, her grandchildren, playing in the distance. So right away it anchored in her family life. And then connective tissue. This living history presented a fine opportunity to incorporate more Hawaiian language, pule and oli, prayers and chants, for added authenticity because the Queen was fascinated by religion, not only the Christian one she lived by, but all other religions that were present in Hawaii. She was also a fine musician who wrote over 150 songs, and she was a singer who played the piano, organ, guitar, and auto harp. So those 2 elements were added. The first one was a uwe, a cry, after both her husband passed and her brother had passed not long before, 8 months before. And in her agony, she bowed over and expressing her grief. And then the end of the piece was a song she has written as the national anthem for Hawaii. Eventually, it was the one written by King Kalakaua was used, but she actually wrote one that was used for many, many years. Yeah. E mau ke e o ka aina, ma ko pono maua, ma ko mana nui. E ola kamui, e ola kamui. Long live our sovereign. Good way to wrap up that living history. Now, one of the things that rose to the surface during this one is that there's a concept of family in Hawaii that had to be laid as a foundation. Many humanities themes surfaced, but this foundational one was very important. So she explained, now these are her words, yeah? In the old Hanai system, it would be natural for me to ask for the child. In speaking of our relationship, I have adopted the term customarily used in the English language, but there was no such modification recognized in my native land. I knew no other father or mother than my foster parents, no other sister than Bernice. This was in accordance with Hawaiian customs. It is not easy to explain to those alien to our national life, but it seems perfectly natural to us. As intelligible to reason as can be given is that this alliance by adoption cemented the ties of friendship between chiefs. It spread to the common people, and it has doubtless fostered a community of interest and harmony, in the Queen's own words. An interesting dilemma arose. And what do we have there? We have Subjectivity, objectivity, truth, and relativity. I like to call it to vet or not to vet. Now, during preparation of the script, a visit with a descendant of the Queen was arranged, and the descendant lives in Nu'uanu Valley on Oahu and welcomed me warmly into her home. Her home filled with the Queen's personal items. Took my breath away. I have chicken skin like crazy right now. I was given the Queen's scrapbook to look through and a trowel that she had used to lay the cornerstone at a school named after her in Kaimuki. Both of those items worked their way into the living history. We chatted. She had read my draft and felt the need to point out a particular situation that centered on the Queen's second Hanai child. She wanted to let me know that the Queen's family felt strongly that the Queen herself had arranged for what we would call today a surrogate to bring John Dominus Aimoku into this world. So I honored that important insight into family history. The historian who reviewed the final script suggested, however, that there was no written proof to justify that inclusion. Herein rose the dilemma. Honor the family's oral history or rely on the history books. The family's beliefs remained in the final telling of the Queen's story. To this day. Yeah, Polole, we are and remain an oral history-based oral society. The other thing that became apparent is that we have to have humor in everything. There was an epiphany that the daily lives of everybody, we find humorous moments. So it became clear that when the Queen was, as a mother, frustrated with the antics of her last Hanai, Kaipo, that she would nukuvaleyaya, scold him. He was a rascal, and his carousing troubled her. So she did reprimand him, as any mother would. So I added a moment with the Queen taking Galatians, which talking about you reaping what you sow, and calling him to her side and making sure he stood right there and listened to his mama, telling him all the good things that were in that story. And if she moved, she said, come back, come back. So we added this humorous little moment, iko lela Hawaii. So the audience understood what was going on, even if they were not Hawaiian language speakers, because who has not seen a mother say, behave to their children? Now, these living history performances begat other requests for more scripts about the Queen's life, two of them from the Hila Hongwanji, in appreciation of the Queen's support of Buddhism in Hawaii. One was called the 100th anniversary of Lili'u Okalani Gardens. You need to see those while you're in Hilo, off of Hilo Bay, built, named after the Queen, built by our sister city in Japan, a Japanese motif. The other was Lili'u Okalani's Goten-e visit. And others commemorated her life, including Mauna a Wakea, He Aloha, on the occasion of her birthday during the protest over the development on Mauna Kea. The final Lili'u Okalani living history grew unexpectedly out of two musicians wanting to play the Queen's music. So we have both a harp and a flute here. Ho'okia'i Lili'u Okalani, ho'okia'i meaning to protect, Lili'u Okalani, centered on the Queen's funeral. The ceremony was on November 18th, 1917, and began with that phrase that's noted there, the alaloa, thicken the water and say, it is time, and ali'i passes. It became a conduit for both her music and the Queen reflecting on those whom she loved during her lifetime. She appeared at her funeral, talked about those who came and fell next to her, agonizing about their love for her, and she would comment on all that and remember the time she had spent with them. And that opening was a flash of redfish gathering, a sign in our culture that an ali'i was passing. Now, innovative performances began to take shape as people in the community saw the value of living history. They requested more and sometimes fascinating possibilities. For instance, this one. This is the opening. of that hoʻokiaʻi. For time's sake, I'm not going to go through it, but this is when the queen is standing there seeing the fish gather. And in Hawaiian, she says, there they are surging. So yes, an ali'i is passing. So let me go on to the next here. This is a production of living history called Anchored. Julian, Emma, Lydia, another trinity. And if you'll all turn, you can see Julia sitting right in the center right there. Dr. Justena Olalimakia Kalawaki Matos. She portrayed this character. And she is the drama professor now at the Performing Arts. 3 notable women come together in their recognition of the power of prayer to soothe in times of deep loss. In different circumstances, they choose the same means to seek understanding and comfort as they raise their voices to the heavens. But how in the world do these 3 women come together? Julian of Norwich sequestered herself in prayer. Queen Emma held a vigil in the tomb of her husband and son. And Queen Liliʻuokalani was imprisoned at Iolani Palace after the overthrow of the Hawaiian kingdom. And one of her great songs is written at that time. Now, it's an odd combination, but there was a secretary at the Episcopal Church in Honolulu who suggested bringing these 3 historical figures together because they all 3 chose quiet and solitude to go through their feelings and to reach out for comfort, which I thought was an incredible context, right? So we went ahead and created that one. We also had, as this expanded beyond the monarchy, a production called Final Harvest. And these are all UH Hilo students who appeared as actors, which was marvelous. You notice, though, upper right there, is it right to you? Yes, it is. There's a little baseball cap, and then the woman pointing has this, what we call a hapi coat with Hawaiian print on it. And then the person in the far left there is wearing a straw hat. Okay, these were items that were in boxes underneath everybody's house. So the context here was everything. Young college kids go through the detritus of people's lives, treasures left behind, and transform into the people who owned the items to tell their story. The script was utilized, interviews by UH Manoa's Center for Oral History. And I'm going to see if it will play. No, it's not going to play. Let me see if I can. It's just so charming, I wanted to see if I can get it. Hyperlink no ko'oi.
Yeah, okay, Mom. Yeah, tomorrow. Oh, hey, Ray. Glad you're here early. Mom said I had to bring this home.
Wow. Hey, thanks, Pili. Hey, just what I needed.
A lot of junk, if you ask me. You don't know how many cane spiders and centipedes I had to avoid on the barots under the house. What do you want this junk for anyway?
Oh, I convinced my dad to do something different with the window.
You had an idea.
Hey, we'll make fun, all right? Once in a while, this old brain responds.
Give me that.
Nah. I gotta do a project for my marketing class at UH. So, I came up with this theme. Community. Yeah, that's the buzzword these days, man. Should land me one good grade.
Okay, let's see if we can get back to where we need to be. I'm sorry that was a lower level. We didn't check that level with the new setup, Kalumai. But you get the context, right? They go through all the boxes, they create a store front, and each item dictates a character. So that was really fun. Recently, Nani o Kahuku was shaped when a national park ranger found a journal for a young woman who lived at a ranch in Kahuku back in the 1800s. And she came to me, another phone call that said, hey, would you like to make a living history? So it's centered on in situ. The actress was at the ranch. It exists to this day, interacting with the audience. All the quotidian information about the ranch, the values of family, nationalism, hard work, and the retention of cultural activities such as singing traditional mele at the end of the day, that's songs, yeah? And gathering to dance hula at the end of the long work day. And lots of other ethnic groups began to be interested in capturing and enlivening their stories via living history of Hawaii's plantation era. And I'm happy to say Dr. Norman Aroncon's back there because it was his brainchild to do a production on the Sakara, Filipino plantation workers. Norman, maikai, mahalo. He may be a professor of agriculture, but he's also the star of most of our productions at the Performing Arts Department. You should see how high he kicks. Polole. So we have students here depicting cicada plantation workers. And then we also had an instance where Portuguese in Hawaii were celebrating their 150th anniversary of arriving in Hawaii. So these are the actors, the actual original people, the immigrants' descendants, and then actors who portrayed them in a program called Saudade, the longing. You know, I'm so very pleased that there is an audience for living history on this Moko Keawe. It's gratifying to know that our people want to learn their history, want to bring lessons from those other times and sensibilities into today's reality. In short, they want what every beginning introduction to theater text amplifies. Our need to educate and provoke thought, our need to glorify those who made a difference, and our need to be entertained. So mahalo nui for your time and consideration. Do consider you collecting your stories, and don't hesitate to try to bring them to life. Anything and everything that comes out of this conference these next few days might be fodder for sharing with a larger audience. So, e olu olu, let us help celebrate the human story. Mahalo. Questions, I think. You said if there was, I don't know what time it is and all that. If anybody had questions or comments, polole, hiki. Do, 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 do. We do have time, right? Yeah, we have till 5 more minutes. Okay. Yes.
Well, thank you very much for this enlightening lecture. Super, super, super educational. And I've learned a lot. Every single slide can be a whole story, can be a whole lecture, can be a whole conference opening. My question is, I've read the theory about the Arabic origin of the word Hawaii, which is in Arabic, Juzr al-Hawa. We say Hawa in Arabic is Hawaii, which is the same word in Arabic. And hearing you speaking in the native languages the last couple of days while I'm here, I hear a lot of Arabic infused in the language. Our host today, his name is Hayati. Hayati is life in Arabic. Many of the names, many of the words, many even of the written words bring a lot of Arabic into my mind, particularly because I've read this theory about Juzr al-Hawa is the origin word in Arabic. So my question, I think you answered with your, astonishment here, is have you traced any Arabic, any Islamic migrants, background, connections, ties in your research? If yes, please let us know. If no, I'll be glad and hope that we can work on that.
Wow. We have to work. I'm astonished. That's wonderful. Of course, I go, we are the world. Oh, that's wonderful. Kikahimo kumu. Are you here? We have any kumu in the house that Hawaii or history? Not at the moment, because Pele might be able to help us if there was information. So I would like the two of you to meet later. Pele was here. She came up with a wonderful lauaho.
I love that.
Yes.
I love that.
So, and because she's from that lineage, her great-grandmother was probably the most important Hawaiian scholar that ever existed. I'd love for the two of you to talk. What doors just opened by what you said? Linguistic connections. You know, a few years ago I was traveling in France, and down where the native people down there, there's signs. There were some Hawaiian words. I took the pictures of the signs and sent it to my family, and they all said, I thought you were in Europe. Actually, la was there, a number of different things that were Hawaiian words. I was so shocked. So it would be fascinating to find out, right? Yeah. Okay, Clint, there's an educator there. Manu, is Manu here by any chance? Okay. We need to get the connections made, and hey, what a wonderful thing to think that we might be connected. Okay. Bye.
is living heartbeat to manawa life force. But this is just a project I curated called Garden of Memories, and talking about connections. This is a 1890 Hawaiian quilt.
Oh, yes.
And obviously I'm not Hawaiian. I was born and raised in Papua New Guinea, but I've worked with Māori Pacific artists, including Hawaiian, all my life. And my mother died when I was putting this together, so it's a project called Garden of Memories, but it's named after a little garden that was left in the area where I now live to the local mana whenua, the Ngaitai Kitamaki o Aroa, and it's, there was a little Marian museum there built by Princess Tapuia, who from the Kingitanga movement. My whole point about this is that this is an exhibition that, as part of my research, I contacted my cultural knowledge holders from obviously Auckland Museum, but and the Hawaiian community, and also educators like Professor Stacey Kamahiro, who is an expert on Hawaiian quilts. And this whole exhibition was 6 quilts, and then asking Indigenous Pacific women artists and 1 male to respond to the quilts in my collection. And I included a Wonder Woman quilt from 1940 for the artisan communities to also explore the US role in the Pacific. And one of the artists that I asked actually is two fellow Mary, they're from the Solomon Islands. So of course their kind of memories and response through activation and performance was not positive because they're from Guadalcanal, and it's the whole remnants. But it was just amazing to see, but in a way their response was positive because my mother had died a month before this project, during this project opened, and the 2 Solomon Island Wontok sisters did a activation where they had these little red nail tins filled with earth, and they played old radio with their mother's songs. And so basically what they were doing was telling me we've lost our mother too. So this whole
commonality.
this whole thing is
We
about
should be
women.
making this part of that. What do you call it? The talking circle that's coming up
Oh,
next?
okay, cool. I don't want to take over.
Oh, it's
I was just
beautiful,
sitting
though.
here and you were talking. I thought,
Thank you.
do I be brave enough to have the Hawaiian quilt
Thank you
out?
very much.
I
Next
think it's
question.
wonderful to. Okay.
Yes, please.
Yes.
I came in a little late for the morning welcome, so I don't know if this was addressed. But I was just really curious listening to your story of the performances about the history of theater in Hawaii. I mean, I know it's very much an oral tradition, but what kind of theatrical performances, were there theatrical performances outside the dance or in
Yes, because Hawaiian hula is a theatrical form.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
But during the monarchy, the Queen wrote operas. They had little operettas. They really loved the Western form as well. Those 2 came together. And it was very, very popular. There were little theaters all over the place, and people were writing for it. But we can't deny that there were hundreds of years of our own Hawaiian theater through the hula. Yeah, which included everything from costuming to you name it. It was there. The story is as rich as any other theatrical piece. And to this day, you'll see as you go about our island, and all of us who are from here will see, kids take to performance here. Don't we know it? Because it's part of their heritage. And I really saw it more in Samoa than I saw here, because we lost so much for so long and it's all coming back. In Samoa, you walk down the street, there's a kid with 2 sticks that you just picked up, and singing. I would stop and my breath was taken away. It was right there, immediately at his fingers, that type of thing. And I wept, because at that point, this is the early 80s, we had lost so much, but it's since a lot has come back. But it was very welcomed here and done here. There's a grand theater on Oahu in traditional Western style, but there's a lot of hālau, hula schools who use it now. for their programming. So it was a good coupling. Yeah.
Were you finished? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I got excited. Something that you said made me think to ask this question is, Hawaiian language has been oral and tradition. And so as you're preserving and revitalizing the heritage and history, is the language something that was the print language back when you're saying they started to do the writings and the newspapers and things? Was it dated back to that or even prior? When did it become written?
It was only in the, when some missionaries, it was all oral, and then missionaries back here 1820 introduced over time the possibility, and by the 1830s, the newspapers. Hawaiians took to it like crazy. It was yet another way. So the newspapers are really cool. We can go online and read them because there's a lot of the reporters we expected. There's gossip, there's all kinds of stuff. It became a mirror to the society. It was a new way to express everything about their lives. You know, tons of newspapers with different perspectives, and it's really a delight. So it was a tool that was gained. We are proud in Hawaii that education is one of the backbone values of our society. So immediately when something new was introduced, we believe King Hālau was a marine biologist, self-taught. You can put him in that category today. Just learning about the world and how to use our resources and everything was part of the Hawaiian way of dealing with the world. Oh, my friend from Massachusetts.
Yes. So as a librarian and archivist, I was so excited when I saw that you did primary source research. Yay. So two questions, but they're intertwined. So with Lin-Manuel Miranda,
The God?
he has openly talked about how Hamilton is based solely on primary sources kept by NARA in the Library of Congress. But it was males recording male history. So that sort of lent itself to what Hamilton is.
Except for the ending, it's very much through the woman's perspective. So that may be Lin-Manuel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's where he comes in as opposed to the historical record. So as you're doing your research, where Hawaiian history for so long has been controlled by the white man as opposed to the locals and the indigenous, how did you address that gap in the primary research? Apart from lack of resources, but how do you address the winner is the one who tells the story?
Well, in our instance, a lot of our winners, leaders, were women. We're a matriarchal society, really powerful women throughout history, from pre-written history and on too. So a lot of the voices and the stories came through the female source and influence. So that's one of the givens. And then the fact that a lot of the writings, once writing was introduced, came from female leaders and such. That helped a great deal. We do have a problem, we did for many years, you know, that we wanted finally to take our stories from people whose feet were on this land, not people who are on top of a ship looking at us. We kept saying, something's wrong with this, because we wouldn't say it that way. Oh, okay, that's because it's over there. So we bring it here and try to remember what that was. But we're still learning. I am. I was raised more in my Portuguese side of my family, so I had to relearn everything from the Hawaiian side. And I'm typical. Yeah, I'm typical. We have very few 100% Hawaiians left in our society. We're results. In fact, with this informality and this warmth of this group, I can say I have a dear friend who calls himself the poster child for colonization, because he has 10 different ethnicities. And that's, most of us are that. Most of us are mixtures of people who came to Hawaii for the plantation history and everything. So we still look for those sources, but I think we're very sensitive to listen to the voices that come from those who have worked within the culture avidly. The kumu here at the university, those who taught them, the kupuna, who are daima in the community. Part of the good thing is that Hawaiian language movement, which by the way looked to New Zealand as a sort, because in New Zealand, one community against, they had their, we do punanaleo, they had something that's equivalent to that we learned from them. Okay, to little preschools to learn language, yeah. We look to them to do that, but part of their system, those people who were trying to save our language, they interviewed every single kupuna they could find. So we have videos, we have tapes. There was that rush to gather as much information as possible, and then to share it. So that desperation led to good things. And there was always, I think, once we finally realized, oh, we have a lot of good things in our backyard, we use a kind of discernment about what we want to listen to from whose perspective, and try to make it be maka'aina, on the earth here. And if anyone else would like to add to that, I'm not the expert at all. I'm a mother for kids who went to immersion, and I have theater, and I put those worlds together. So
there's time for one more question. If you're brave.
Hi, and this is another of Plenary speakers here.
It's amazing what you've done. I wanted to ask you, informed with all of what you've learned, if there is room to what Hawaiians will be in the future. Like if there is a play and the, who's working on that? Like what are the dreams of the people that were interviewed that didn't materialize, and maybe you can put it out there.
You know, I feel we're in a place where, in a way, nobody hesitates anymore. Growing up, we're told, oh, no big waves. Don't cause any pilikia, any trouble. That melted away with the Hawaiian Renaissance, thank goodness. So anything is possible. When I drive up to McDonald's and I'm talking to my kids in Hawaiian and I go to the window and the person in the window answers in Hawaiian, remember when that happened, we get verklempt here. It was shocking because that also said, oh, it's everywhere, it's everywhere. So anything's possible. Dr. Olali Matos here has a group, so this is an ad and anyone is welcome. Twice a month, a play reading hui. Hui means a gathering. Gathers online through Zoom, the glorious, only glorious thing that came out of the pandemic. And we read original plays. So it's been 3 years or so now?
5, since the start.
5, okay, when it started. And I would say hundreds of plays have been read at this point. Many of them been produced.
Say the name loudly.
Keaka Lehua is the name of the play reading group. And she is Dr. Yusen. In fact, I'll do a commercial. This afternoon at 5:30, Olali and Victoria Newell, the playwright I mentioned, and myself, will do a session on Victoria's uncle, who's the incredible playwright from the Pacific, John Newell. So at 5:30, we'll be in session. And you're very welcome to connect with Olali. People from all over the world come by Zoom. They offer their plays. She puts them in a, what do you supposed to call it, a queue? We don't have to use that word here. Is that the lineup of things? Yeah, queue that, queue. And then once your turn, we read the play, and then we discuss it afterwards. And a lot of the plays have gone into production after that. In the past couple of years, a lot of them have seen the light of day, the stage, and found new audiences with new voices, most of them about Hawaii. But that doesn't mean only about Hawaii. We have people in New York and Costa Rica and Philippines and
Australia. New Zealand.
Yeah, who tune in twice a month and read. And by the way, when you tune in, you're always asked, would you like to read this character? And then they say you, yes, usually we read the play aloud and talk about it. So there's great hope. I think she is a mover and shaker who's changed that platform.
Oh, thank you so much.
Great time, actually.
Okay, well, everybody, we're now moving into the coffee break. The coffee's outside, and then from there, don't be shy.